It's a competition with the power to change women's lives in India, but some of this year's Miss India contestants are sparking a backlash. An online photo of the 30 contestants reveals women with only fair skin tones. This in a country that is very diverse. So joining me now to talk about this is Thurka Gunaratnam. She is a filmmaker and educator based in Mississauga. Okay, so Thurka, you have seen this happen before, and you've been trying to also bring a lot of attention to this conversation. First, I want to ask you, when you saw this spread and there's all this criticism that you see online because of the fact that all the contestants essentially have the same skin tone, which we know is not the case in India, what was your first reaction?
Yeah. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I didn't even know it was a thing just because I've stopped engaging in content that doesn't service to my well-being and to the self-love that I'm trying to generate with the colorism I've lived.
Yeah.
It's a very cis, hetero pageant. It doesn't speak to a lot of diverse communities outside of skin tone. And it's India. India's just a big Fair and Lovely ad on its own, you know?
So you think that essentially this is just sort of a representation of this idea that exists within the culture there, that only fair skin can be considered beautiful?
Yeah, for them, I think, you know, colonization, casteism contributes to colorism. But to me, the concern is the younger generation. You know, in classrooms, I've seen students talk about how much they're unhappy with the way they look. You hear it in the hallways. I heard of a mother that had a daughter who got a scab, 5-year-old child, and when she peeled off the skin, she said to her mom in Brampton, "Mommy, can we peel off my whole skin? I'll be lighter." So to me, the concern is what education and resources are we providing to younger students so that we have the tools to train educators as well, because people don't know what colorism is. Unless we grew up looking a certain way.
And unless there is a greater conversation about it. So when you did then take a look at the sort of conversations that are going on online right now about this particular pageant itself, what sort of struck you? What stood out to you? Is this the first time that really we're seeing prominent voices come out on it, and so many voices collectively? Because I can't remember the last time that mainstream organizations around the world have covered this.
Yeah, that's true. It's so repetitive. It's very repetitive. I think like when it reaches a mainstream media source like this, everyone's like, whoa, what's this? Last night, the comedy show that I produced, I told them, I'm like, CBC asked me to come in. I'm like, the truth is, I'm like, does anyone know what colorism is or isn't? And we had like a 50% white audience, and people put up their hands. People don't know what it is, so to them this is shocking news. To us, this is everyday news. To me, it's disappointing. I have better expectations of our community, but as a filmmaker and a content creator, I think it's just important to keep creating the narratives that we want to see, especially with representation, because Miss India Pageant, sure, it's, you know, able-bodied, skinny, tall. There's not much diversity. Do they have trans women on the Miss India Pageant lineup? I don't think so.
And what do you think it says also about the socioeconomic dynamic that we're seeing, the lack of diversity in that front that is also being portrayed by the physicalities of it all?
Yeah, I think with a country like India, that historically, you know, colonization has led to violences of these types. And I know it's hard to think about colorism as a type of violence, but it impacts communities beyond India. It impacts Caribbean. It's anti-black when you think about it, even for South Asians to be saying, no, we want to look as white as our colonizers. Or if it is something that's generated from casteism, it still doesn't contribute meaningfully in the communities we live in here today, because we need to be supportive of people that don't look like us.
And the very final question for you, in terms of Canadian awareness about this, you said that it's not something that a lot of Canadians know about. Why do you think that it is something that Canadians should be perhaps more aware of or paying a little bit more attention to?
Canadians should care because we have a very large South Asian and melanin-rich population. And because Fair and Lovely, or the notions that you have to be a certain skin tone to have the opportunities, goes to remind us that it's still reinforced in the communities we live in, be it kindergarten classrooms, high school students, or adults like us that hear it in our community gatherings, if you will. Also, you know, if you know someone that is of darker skin tone, regardless of whether they're straight or queer, also happy Pride, let them know they're beautiful, because it doesn't allow dark-skinned people to even put themselves out there, because for many of us, we are convinced that the way we look is not palatable to Bollywood or Hollywood.
All right. Well, thank you for this important conversation. We appreciated it. That, again, is Thurka Gunaratnam, and she's a filmmaker and educator based in Mississauga. Thank you, Thurka.